Man, Doc, what's going on, man? How are you?
We're doing very well here, Neil. And you?
Fantastic. And I love today's topic, and it's a controversial one, to say the least. What is medical gaslighting?
Well,
So before I even get to the question, where does the term gaslighting come from?
this is the Gaslight comes from a 1944 American psychological thriller called Gaslight. And it starred Ingrid Bergman, and she won the Academy Award for that. Charles Boyer, who was her mean husband, Joseph Cotten, who was the protagonist, and Angela Lansbury, who was the kind of the snotty maid. This is based on a 1940 English film and a 1938 play called Gaslight.
Okay, so that's just so what is so you talked a little bit about already the movie. So what is the movie about? What does it explore?
Well, exactly. It explores the movie Gaslight explores the threat of institutionalization. Now, that's a word that maybe doesn't mean anything to a lot of people, and I kind of thought twice about putting it in there. But what they're talking about is putting women in something that my mother used to call the nut house or an insane asylum. And women could be placed there by their husbands. And this process went up through the 1950s. I actually had patients whose mothers were worried about getting locked up because they were smoking. They were being naughty. Anyway, this started in the Victorian era and probably didn't end till the late 50s. And it demonstrates a husband's privilege and power over his wife.
Oh my goodness. And it's something, Doc, when you think about it, that people are using this term way too much. So what is the core message of the movie Gaslight?
Well, yes, every time you turn around, somebody's gaslighting something.
Yeah, but Doc, I'm gonna just ask you, what is your thought process? What about all these people on social media? He just gaslighted me, or she just gaslighted me.
Well, in the short sense, Neil, that it has to do with dismissiveness. In other words, you aren't there. Your point isn't right. The movie is about the insidious nature of psychological manipulation and emotional abuse. But when people talk about he gaslighted me or gaslit me, it is the psychological manipulation. And the the movie demonstrates how abusers can subtly and persistently distort a victim's concept of their own reality so that they doubt their own perceptions.
It's crazy for sure. Basically, let's go to how does the term gaslighting apply to medical care today?
Well, one of the big problems with medical care today is called dismissiveness. And the two are really related. So, medical gaslighting has to do with the term given to healthcare providers who cause patients to distort their perceptions of their illness. In other words, you really aren't sick. You really don't have anything going on with you. It's all in your head.
Okay. Okay, so that's very interesting. And why are people doing this before I get to the example? Why? Why are medical people doing this? Why do they, in a way, just want to dismiss you, give you medication, and walk away instead of really find the root of the problem? What do you think the problem is?
I know exactly what it is because I have fought against it for 45 years. It's a cop out, Neil. It's really saying to the patient, I don't want to spend any more time with you. Get out of my office.
Yeah, and that's just crap. That's their
Uh, it,
job.
yeah,
I
well,
mean,
it's
how many teachers have gaslighted parents? Dear Lord. How
uh,
many people, other professionals, we call customer service of gaslit? Yeah.
yes. Well, there's a lot of it in medicine today. We'll get to it a little bit further down here.
All right. Give me the concrete example of medical gaslighting today.
It has to do with, in particular, the most popular, and again, we might be uh, anyway removed for this, but It has to do with COVID symptoms. In other words, people come in with long COVID, or they come in with symptoms after they get their shot, their vaccination, and the doctor says, "Oh, there's not really anything wrong with you."
Oh my goodness. It's unbelievable. And guess what? FYI, you only could stream to a certain amount of Facebook pages. We didn't reconnect on one of my channels. Interesting thing. And when you do a live stream, you never know. So Facebook is gaslighting me and one of my clients today, where they couldn't even go live in their Facebook group. Interesting stuff. I don't know. Uh, so those concrete examples. Is there a moral to this story?
Well, yes, recognize the signs of manipulation and abuse, even if it comes from your healthcare provider. Trust your own instincts, even when others try to convince you otherwise.
And that's tough because you get ticked off saying what the heck. And I have examples of this, and I guess, can I put these on the, we should talk about these on the podcast. We should add another one to gaslighting and just start to just call people out right on the radio, right on podcasting. I like the
Let,
idea.
we can do that next Thursday. How about it? We plan.
Okay, we figure out some forms of some of the things, experiences we've had with healthcare providers who gaslit and how they don't listen to the specific situation. One of the biggest forms of gaslighting is the ones when you go to the ER, where they do an extremely outrageous diagnosis. You're going to lose your toe. Then you go someone else and say, everything's fine. Is that a reverse gaslighting?
And actually, there's all kinds of manipulation that can occur, but basically, what you're experiencing in the ER is something called treat 'em and street 'em. In other words, give me something to treat and get the hell out of my sight.
Well, this happened to my dog Chewy, and it's happened multiple times by veterinarians. So I guess
Yes,
there's gaslighting veterinarians as well.
absolutely. Yep. I'll take your money and then you leave.
Or we'll charge you X more because we're concerned so we can bill it. But it's a business. Doc, how much are you told if you work for a medical provider that it's more about the billing versus the treatment?
Well, of course, today, especially when you have electronic medical records, the record becomes the patient. The patient is way down the list of what's important. It's so getting through the electronic record is so onerous that by the time you're done with it, you just want to say, "Get out of here. I can't stand this anymore."
All right. What can you do if you think your provider is gaslighting you? Even your veterinarian. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Well, let me say this. You can't shoot them. We know that.
Really? You can't?
You can't shoot them.
You can't
Just
go
ask,
tell the dog to sick him?
just ask Luigi. Anyway, whether you're whether your provider is a doctor, a nurse practitioner, or as assistant, physician's assistant, you view them as a person of authority. And it's difficult to question authority, especially when you're paying for their opinion. If I go to a lawyer, I don't want to argue with them all day. I'll just take their advice. And of course, and that'll be $500. Anyway, this is a time to tell yourself that you have real concerns, legitimate concerns, and that you probably need to think about getting your health care from somebody who will listen to you.
What about gaslighting attorneys? They're out there too.
Oh God, don't get me started. Let me tell you this. If lawyers had to behave like doctors, they'd be in big trouble. Big
All
trouble.
right. So
I mean, the lawyers would be.
how do you find other healthcare providers?
Well, the first thing is what you shouldn't do. Don't waste your time trying to find a doctor in the same clinic because they're going to think the same way and you just get labeled as a doctor shopper. So, and you don't want to be labeled that, I can tell you. I mean, that's an inside story. But the thing to do, you can try Google, you can try talking to your neighbors, your friends, your relatives. But don't take no for an answer. Sometimes you may need to visit a lot of doctors.
How many? And so how many doctors you're gonna have to meet? That's hard because a lot of people don't have the time, man.
Well, not only that, but your insurance is going to stop paying for your visits after a while.
Well,
You
we need
know,
to gaslight insurance companies as well. I guess we'll gaslight them or we'll call
well,
out them. Good.
if you're looking at something like United Health that automatically rejects 31% of all claims, they are gaslighting the people who buy their insurance. So
So,
yes,
so we should tell United Healthcare to screw themselves, pretty much.
I would like to do that. Yes.
All right. Okay. So we've just gaslighted United Healthcare. All
Yeah,
right.
good.
They're not getting a podcast anytime soon.
It-
Is dismantling
we're,
patient?
we're not shooting them, Neil.
Well, I'm going to make sure we tag United Healthcare on these posts. Is dismissing patient concerns dangerous?
Absolutely. Of all of the sins that medical providers can make, this is by far and away the worst one because it's dangerous for the patient and it's dangerous for the healthcare provider. It increases risks to everybody, bad outcomes, and medical malpractice.
Doc, this is just a very interesting topic, and I got to thank the producer because your producer just came up with some really interesting ones I would not have thought. What is one example of gaslighting? Well, I think we talked about this already. So, is dismantling patient concerns dangerous? We talked about that. So, is medical gaslighting ranked as the top patient safety concern, Doc?
It certainly is. It's number one. There are actually nine behind it. But if I were going to grade gaslighting, I'd give it one, two, three, four, and five as far as the top five concerns.
And we just tagged United Healthcare in the post, by the way. So we'll see what they think of us.
Good.
And so we just tagged them. The last question on today is so we talked about it. The best place to go is worlddocallen.com. Pick up pregnancy your way. If you're about to have a baby, make sure you go to worlddocallen.com or go to Amazon and pick up pregnancy your way. Thank you, Doc.
Thank you,
All
Neil.
right, that was